Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. We're live here today to discuss the Saquon Barkley contract situation with the New York Giants. Today, of course, is deadline day for Barkley and the Giants. So we'll find out by 4 p.m. Eastern time whether or not Barkley and the Giants will be able to reach a long-term deal, or if Barkley is going to have to make a decision on whether to sign the franchise tag, whether to hold out, whether to sit out some games, whether to sit out the season. But the ball will be in Barkley's court if no long-term deal is reached today. And really the only choice Barkley will have to play in 2023 would be to play on the $10.091 million franchise tag. What I thought we would do here today, I'm going to answer some mailbag questions. Our weekly Big Blue View mailbag, which runs on Saturdays each week, was filled with Barkley questions this week. There are still some Barkley negotiation questions trickling into the mailbox. Thought I would answer a couple of those, and then hopefully you guys will have some questions. Please drop those into the chat if you have questions, and I will answer those the best I can. If we don't get any questions, I'll just do the best I can to explain where I think the Barkley situation is, where I think it's headed, and what happens next based on whether or not a deal gets done. All right, one of the questions that I got to the Big Review mailbag over the weekend is from George Mottler. And George is saying that he's been reading that the franchise tag for running backs will increase about 20% in 2024 to around $22 million. Why would that be the case if running back contracts appear to be increasing? And could that be the reason why the Giants prefer to offer $19.5 million guaranteed? And George, the reality of it is you're misinterpreting the $22 million figure that's being tossed around. The franchise tag for Barkley in 2023, the franchise tag for running backs is $10.091 million. That franchise tag is not going to increase to $22 million in 2024. That would be more than double what it is currently. We don't know what that tag is going to be. We won't know until next off season. The $22 million figure comes from a collectively bargained agreement between the players and the NFL. The situation is this: if a player is franchise tagged 2 years in a row, he gets, in the second year of that tag, he gets 120% of the salary that he played on in the previous season. So the franchise tag in 2023 is $10.091 million. If Barkley plays on that tag in 2023, and then the Giants were to franchise tag him again in 2024, the value of that tag, 120% of the $10.091 million, is just a shade over $12.1 million. That would be the tag value for Barkley in 2024. So the two combined, a little bit over 10 and just a shade over 12, would combine for Barkley to make $22.2 million on the franchise tag in 2023 and 2024 combined. So that is where you're seeing and hearing that number. It's not $22 million for the 2024 season. All right, another question came from Lou Garu, and Lou asks, what happens if Barkley sits out game one? He says, we know that sitting out is bad strategy for Barkley, but are there severe consequences that would keep him from sitting out a game or two or even more than that. And Lou, the most severe consequence is simply this: it's simply money. Saquon Barkley, on a week to week basis, on the franchise tag in 2023, would earn $560,611 per game. Each week that he sits out, he loses that much money. Sitting out 1 week is going to cost him a little bit more than $500,000. Sitting out 2 weeks is going to cost him more than $1 million, $1.1 million. Sitting out the entire season would cost him the entire $10 million. So he's not going to sit out this season. Would he sit out a game? I don't know. I doubt that as well. Because again, there's more than $500,000 that he won't get back if he chooses to do something like that. So I have serious doubts that he would do that. The other aspect of Barkley sitting out games is his standing in the locker room. Up to this point, Barkley has the support of his teammates. He has the support of Daniel Jones. He has the support of Dexter Lawrence. He has the support of Andrew Thomas. He has the support of Xavier McKinney, of all of the leaders in the Giants locker room. He is a major figure, a leader in that room. If and one of the other reasons why I don't think Barkley will sit out games is because of how much he cares about his teammates. If he chooses to sit out games, that is when the situation impacts his teammates in a negative way. I simply don't think Barkley is going to want to do that. I don't think he would want to put his teammates at a disadvantage. I think that would damage his standing as a leader, as an incredibly popular guy in that locker room. I think some guys anyway might start to kind of look at him sideways and wonder if he's really more about himself than they may have thought. So I think that Barkley is not going to want to damage his standing in the locker room. So I seriously doubt that he would sit out games primarily because of the money, but also in reality because of the fact that it's going to damage his standing with at least some players in the locker room, maybe with the organization, probably with the fan base. And Barkley, whether he admits it or not, Barkley cares about how he's perceived. He cares about what people think about him. And I simply don't think he's going to want to damage those relationships and damage how he's perceived in the locker room. All right, guys, I please drop some questions in, some comments in if you have them, and I'll discuss whatever I can. I'll answer whatever I can as we await a decision to find out whether there's a deal or no deal over the next few hours. I have said consistently that I believe a deal will get done as we get closer and closer to the final deadline. Obviously, that becomes less and less certain. Jordan Renan of ESPN tweeted this morning that neither the Giants nor Barkley appears to be overly optimistic that a deal is going to get done. Listen, I don't know exactly what Barkley is asking for. What we do know, Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post, reporter who I trust implicitly when he's willing to put a number out there, when he's willing to put his name to something. Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post reported a few days ago that the Giants have held fast to $19.5 million guaranteed in any deal with Barkley. Ryan didn't list any structure to that contract, whether it's a 3-year deal, whether it's a 4-year deal, anything like that. But I would venture a solid guess. I think that guaranteed money of that amount would probably be for 2 years. And listen, Saquon, I've had questions about why Saquon simply wouldn't take that. He's not going to take that for the simple reason that when you look at a guy like Derrick Henry back in 2020 getting a deal that guaranteed him more than $25 million. You look at Christian McCaffrey getting a deal that fully guaranteed him $30 million and can overall get him $38 million guaranteed. Saquon is not going to sign a deal for $19.5 million guaranteed, not until and unless he absolutely has to. That he can make, as we've said, he can make a total of $22.2 million over the 2-year period if the Giants were to franchise tag him twice. So, I've talked to Joel Corey, CBS Sports cap analyst, former sports agent, and Corey has basically said the negotiation doesn't get serious. Barkley doesn't seriously consider signing on the dotted line until the Giants offer him at least the 22.2 million in guaranteed money. And I buy that. I believe that. I don't know why Saquon would sign for any less than that. So we'll see what happens. Ryan Dunleavy had reported that the Giants had been sticking to that 19.5 million. And I know from having talked to Joe Shane at the combine, from having talked to him throughout the offseason, I know that Joe has a walkaway number for Saquon Barkley. And I wrote this over the weekend. I do not believe that walkaway number is $19.5 million. It might be 22.2. It might be 24. It might be 26 in terms of guaranteed money. But deadline spur action, and Joe wasn't going to make that 22 or 24 or $26 million offer until he absolutely has to. Because if he puts that $24 million guaranteed offer on the table, if he had put that on the table 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago, Saquon's still going to say no to that because there's still time before the deadline. And what Joe's going to wind up doing, if he really ultimately wants to give Saquon $24 million in guaranteed money, he puts that on the table 3 weeks ago. As I said, Saquon's going to say no. And the Giants are going to wind up paying Barkley $30 million in guaranteed money, which is where they don't want to be. So I would expect there to be movement today by the Giants. Will it be enough movement to get Barkley to sign a deal? I really don't know. We'll have to see. We'll know in a few hours. But if the Giants get to 22 million, 24 million with some incentives, I have advocated for a 3-year, $39 million deal with the first 2 years fully guaranteed. That would be $26 million. You can go 4 years, $13 million a year. I had an agent tell me that he thinks that a deal isn't going to get done unless the Giants are willing to put an average annual value of $13 million on it. That seems to be kind of a magic number. Barkley's turned down, or has reportedly turned down, offers of $12.5 million. He's reportedly turned down an offer of between 13 and 14 as well. The thing we don't know is the guaranteed money, and the guaranteed money is really what's important here, not necessarily the average annual value, although I'm sure that Barkley would like an average annual value somewhere above Derrick Henry, somewhere above that cluster of running backs that includes Alvin Kamara, I believe, that's in the $12 million range. Nick Chubb, I think, is in that range. I think Barkley would like to land somewhere in between that range and the $16 million average annual value that Christian McCaffrey has in his contract. I think, though, that in the end, the guaranteed money is the important part. I think that's the respect that Barkley is talking about. It's he wants more than that 22.2 million. I would, if I was him. We know that the running back market has tanked. We know that that a lot of running backs, Joe Mixon, Miles Sanders, uh, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, they're not getting the money that they would have hoped to have gotten. They're getting released if teams don't think they're meeting the value of their contracts. So we know that it's a tricky situation, but I just don't see a deal until and unless the Giants hit that 22.2 million, maybe a little bit above that. And I fully believe that the reason that the Giants have drawn a line below that is to leave themselves some last minute negotiating space. Now, what happens if a deal doesn't get done? As I said in my answer to one of the questions earlier, I absolutely do not believe that Barkley will sit out the 2023 season. He's not going to go the Le'Veon Bell nuclear option. He may not be thrilled with $10.091 million. But come on, people. It's $10.091 million. It's more than $500,000 every time he plays in a game, every week that there is a New York Giants football game. He's not going to walk away from that. He's not going to walk away from an entire season, which would damage his legacy, probably damage his career. I don't care how hard he works off the field. If you're going to sit out for a full year on purpose, that's going to damage your career. That's not going to be incentive for anyone to give him a mega contract a year from now. He's not going to walk away from $10 million that he's not ever going to get back. So, and he doesn't increase his earning power. He doesn't increase the likelihood of getting a long-term mega contract by sitting out and watching the Giants play football in 2023. So I don't think there's any way that Barkley sits out the entirety of the 2023 season. Now, if there's no deal today, I don't think 5 minutes after the deadline, Barkley's going to sign the franchise tag and show up at training camp. I would be very surprised if we see Barkley in training camp much before the last week or 2 weeks before the season starts. Maybe we won't see Barkley until right before week 1, until right before opening week of the 2023 NFL season. And honestly, I couldn't blame him for that. If he doesn't sign the tag, he's not contractually obligated to show up because he doesn't have a contract. He doesn't have a signed contract. So I can't blame him, or I wouldn't blame him for showing his displeasure by not showing up until right before week 1. I would almost expect that to be the case. So we'll see what happens. But I believe that Saquon Barkley, when push comes to shove, when the Giants play the Dallas Cowboys week 1, I believe Saquon Barkley's going to be on the field. Will it be under the franchise tag, or will it be with a new long-term contract? I don't know. If there is a contract, as someone said to me the other day, when I was scouring around looking for opinions, it's not going to be at Barkley's number. It's not going to be as much as Barkley wants to make if they get a long-term deal done. It's probably also going to be more than the Giants actually want to pay. But that's what happens in negotiations. I think that's why the Giants have left themselves some room here. They've left themselves an opportunity to up their offer, an opportunity to to try to entice Barkley to sign a deal, and we'll see what happens over the next few hours. All right, Giants fans, I think that's enough for today. We'll be back probably later on this evening, maybe with a quick podcast to update whatever happens, whether there's a deal, whether there's no deal. Now, please check out bigblueview.com. We have a live blog running as news develops. We'll have the news of deal or no deal as soon as it gets reported. We'll have reaction to that, analysis, all of the coverage that you could want. So please stick with bigblueview.com as the day unfolds, and we'll keep you guys up to date. And please remember to subscribe, like, share here on YouTube if you like what you hear, if you like what you see. All right. Thank you very, very much for listening. And please take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.